Senator Schmitt, thanks for joining us. Great to see you.
Good to be with you, Sean.
All right, just tell me, what did you were sitting there in the chamber. I saw you sitting there next to Senator McCormick and some other folks. Give me a sense of what it was like inside the chamber there.
I think what a lot of people don't realize if you've never been in there, and I wasn't ever in there until a couple of years ago, is just it's smaller than it looks like on TV. So there's an intimacy in that room, and you can really kind of feel the energy. You could kind of feel some of the disdain from the Democrats on the other side. So that's kind of palpable in that room. But what struck me was it was a very good, you would appreciate this, just a very good speech. Technically, the way it was executed, and he did a few things which aren't always easy to do in a speech. He kind of set the table. Hey, here's the mess that we inherited. This has been a disaster, open border, 9% inflation, historic comeback in an objectively historic first year, inflation now under 3%, closed border. And then an optimistic vision for America in this America 250 year. And also along the way drew a very important contrast between, and really summed it up in one question, which is, please stand if you agree or you believe that the American government's role is to protect American citizens, not illegal immigrants. Republicans stood up and Democrats refused. I got to tell you, if you're on the wrong side of that question, you got problems. And the Democrats somehow, some way, have found themselves now in that position because there is this kind of like rooting against America vibe that they have, and it's sad. So I thought it was a great speech. I've seen a lot of his speeches. I thought it was one of his best.
Yeah, I actually texted him this morning and said that may be the best speech that you've given. What was you talk about the vibe, like at least watching it on television, I got the sense that Democrats were like angry and upset. Was it clear in the chamber that they weren't happy with the way that he was calling them out for that? I thought that line, by the way, that you pointed out, I played it at the top. That was the defining moment of the night. Frankly, do you agree that was a mistake? Like, why not just stand? Don't give him.
Yeah.
He set them up for that.
And agreed. And listen, they did stand for some stuff. Like, I'm glad they stood for Team USA. That would have been crazy, but they did stand for some stuff. But it's really telling the stuff they did not stand for. It was that question. And then when you talk about another very popular issue like voter ID, that 70+% of Democrats support, they didn't stand for that. And those two are related, Sean. They don't believe in borders. They don't believe that the 15 million people who came here illegally should have to go home. And they think that they shouldn't have to show ID if they try to vote. Like, that is some like fundamental stuff if you're a sovereign country. So when it comes to illegal immigration and voter ID, they're on the wrong side of very popular issues, and that's a problem. But I think the one thing the cameras don't pick up, and I'm glad actually, is just some of the hissing and some of the just the heckling that happens that the cameras and the microphones probably don't pick up. President Trump delivered that speech in spite of it, and I think he also picked and chose smartly of like when he kind of like called them out. He was able to stay on the speech that was very pro-American, very pro like results and optimistic. But there were times where he was able to call them out and say, "I can't believe you won't stand up for that." There's some.
Don't you think? But I actually thought it helped because if
Yes.
I'm an average voter in Missouri and I look and I say, okay, this is the choice this November. A bunch of people who won't stand for this, who are yelling and heckling and calling it out. These guys aren't serious. They're a bunch of clowns. And I actually thought that is reprehensible as it kind of is and lacking in decorum. It gives a very clear illustration of who the alternative is.
Yep. And they look, because you had people who were heckling, you had people who walked out in the middle of the speech, and you had people who didn't show up for the speech at all. Right. And that was on full display. But I think, Sean, this is where they're at for the better part of a decade now. The fuel for the Democrat Party has been this hatred for President Trump and this Trump derangement syndrome. And more than just him, this disdain that they have for middle America, this disdain they have for so-called flyover country. When Barack Obama calls half of America bitter clingers, and when Hillary Clinton calls half of America a basket of deplorables, and when Joe Biden calls half of America trash, at some point you got to just believe what they say. And so now you have a president that said, you know what, I'm going to be the voice for the people who've been left behind. I'm going to be the vessel for change where working families are front and center now. That is a powerful contrast. And I think that was on display last night too.
So we do have a midterm coming up in November. And there's a lot of Republicans last night that were looking at that speech as sort of like tell me what I need to do. What's the roadmap? I agree with you. Like I thought this was a great recitation of all of the things that have happened for people who might not be, and it's not a knock, right? People, you know this from every day in Missouri, that people just are working their tails off. They've got families, they've got hobbies. They don't pay attention to the machinations every day. But last night, the president listed off all of these great accomplishments that's happened in year one. If you bump into a colleague that says, hey, I'm up for re-election, what were the 5 things that you think that I should try to communicate to my state? What would those 4 or 5 things be in your mind?
I think, first of all, I think you have to set the stage of what we were experiencing for 4 years, which was a total disaster, right? 15 million people here illegally, record high inflation. Any new jobs that were created were government jobs and for foreign-born individuals. Now you actually have private sector jobs for Native Americans. That's a good thing. So I think pointing out the disaster that was, and then also this working families tax cut, Sean, the component parts need to be pulled out of it because they're very popular, like no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. What do those 2 things have in common? They're for people. They're like for real people. They're not for companies. They're for like my dad who worked, 7 days a week in the midnight shift so he could get overtime so that we could go on vacation once a year, right? Like that affects real people. So I think personalizing it is how this is going to impact real folks. The inflation adjusted wage growth that we're seeing right now is about $1,200 more just in 1 year than the year before. Under Joe Biden, those families were taking home thousands less, $4,000 less because inflation was out of control and wages weren't keeping up. That's changed. That's dramatic. I also think that we should make sure we continue to focus about we have a secure border now. For a bunch of reasons, that's important. Over 10,000 murders were let in. Hundreds of thousands of violent criminals were let in, making our communities less safe, driving up rents, taking up critical care in emergency rooms. All those things happened under Joe Biden. They've stopped. And so that's an important accomplishment too. So I think it's a combination of the economic, reality on the ground for people we should focus on, having a secure border, and also our communities are safer. Fentanyl's down. Fentanyl deaths are down. Crime is down. These are things that matter to real people.
I think one of the greatest ways that we can vote is by going over and switching to Patriot Mobile. It's not just a great wireless provider of cell phone, and that it is. Let's be honest. They've got international hotspots and roaming and all that, international roaming hotspots, Wi-Fi. It's just amazing as a service, right? Because it runs on the same exact top 3, T-Mobile, AT&T, and Verizon wireless providers. But the cool part about it is it's an actual activist organization. And we've talked to the folks at Patriot Mobile about this. So whether or not it's right to life organizations, Second Amendment, veterans groups, these guys are supporting with the profits groups and values that we can support. And that's so different than what the big companies do with their profits. They support woke DEI policies. So the cool thing about when you switch over to Patriot Mobile, you're not just getting amazing wireless service. You actually can feel good that every time you pay that bill, you're paying the same amount, but you're actually supporting causes that are consistent with your values. And that's the cool thing is it takes like 2 seconds to do this. You go to patriotmobile.com/Spicer, right? And it literally can be done all online. They will send you a QR code. It uploads the eSIM. You'll never know the difference, and you'll be up and running in 2 seconds. This is not like you have to go to any kind of store or anything like this. Go to patriotmobile.com/Spicer or give them a call at 972-PATRIOT, say Spicer, and you get a free month. You actually make out on this deal. You get a better service probably. You can keep your phone, keep your plan, upgrade potentially. It's awesome. You don't have to do any of that, and it all happens real quickly online, and you can actually feel good about the values of the profits from the company that you're supporting. So go to patriotmobile.com/Spicer, give them a call at 972-PATRIOT. The president gave a laundry, not just of what he's accomplished, but also some of the things he wants to do. He talked about healthcare, some of these other things that he wants Congress to do tax-wise. Just realistically, what would you think as we get closer to November the Senate could do?
I think there's probably 2 things. One is, and the president talked about it, the the integrity of our elections, the Save America Act, making sure you have to prove you're an American citizen and prove who you are when you vote. That seems very common sense, and I hope that we can move forward on that. I also think we're not going to get any cooperation from the Democrats on anything really meaningful. And so another reconciliation bill is something that I would support and pushing for that would allow us, again, to make sure we're making critical investments in defense. You could take on some of these affordability, like housing issues, to kind of continue to work on those things. But I think at the end of the day, when the rubber meets the road during election time, President Trump's going to be very active on the campaign trail. It's about getting people out to vote and having the lead time in the runway for people to feel this progress as their tax returns and refunds start coming back. Their paychecks are increasing. They aren't competing with illegal immigrants for jobs. I mean, all these kinds of things are working together. And also, one other point, President Trump talked about, less than $1 trillion worth of investment for 4 years during Joe Biden, $18.5 trillion worth of investment in this country. Crazy. That is new factories. Those are new jobs that are coming online, and they don't happen all at once, but we're laying the foundation, I think, again, for this golden age of America. So I think we should be proud about it. And also this cultural thing that's happened where one party's rooting for America and the other party is rooting against America. I mean, that's a powerful thing. I wish it wasn't the case. I wish you had kind of a mainstream Democrat Party that could talk about secure borders and loving America, and evidently they're not there.
I just want to take the two things you said in order. Save America, a lot of talk about how to get this done. Mike Lee, one of your colleagues, suggesting this talking filibuster. Mm-hmm. Just logistically, Democrats aren't going to support us, right? Yeah. We know that. You saw the reaction last night. And I love the way the president called out the fact that you need two forms of ID to shovel snow in New York, but you can't have one to vote. Okay. What logistically, process-wise, is this talking filibuster the way to go, or is there another way that we can actually see it come through the Senate where it could pass?
I think it's the most realistic way. And I'm glad you asked the question because I think a lot of people believe that a filibuster means something like what Jimmy Stewart did in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, where a senator holds the floor until the point of exhaustion and has to be carried off. And that's how you block a vote on something. It's actually not true. Really, all you got to do is come in and punch the clock, vote no on moving forward on a bill. And if you don't have 60 votes to move forward on it, you don't move forward. What the talking filibuster is, they do it a lot of in a lot of state legislatures, including Missouri, where the state senator, if you want to filibuster something, you got to earn it. You got to be on that floor. And now, so you could force under the current rules the Democrats to do it, to spend hours and hours and weeks on the floor to earn it. Now, there's a responsibility that comes with Republicans because we need to be there if there's a quorum call, meaning if a Democrat says, this is very in the weeds, but says, I note the absence of a quorum, what's that mean? There's not a majority of the senators present there. So Republicans would actually all have to be there too. So it takes a level of commitment, and I don't think you can pull that off for some like random banking bill, but you should be able to do that on something as important as the integrity of our elections and the future of our country.
I totally agree. But this is the key, the word that you wrote, commitment. Yeah. And the question I think a lot of grassroots Republican voters have, MAGA supporters, is that commitment there, right? It doesn't seem like people have the impression the Senate works long or late. So what will it take to make that happen?
Well, I think the grassroots folks that you're talking about should continue to make it clear by contacting your senators about it. I certainly understand that and have heard from a lot of people. Again, I don't think you can pull this off on some like marginal issue.
No. But this is the right one to do it on,
exactly.
Right? I mean,
totally agree. And by the way, Sean, when we do that, we would actually focus the attention of the country on this issue. Because despite what the legacy media wants to do, which is to cover everything under the sun that's meaningless to try to divert attention from the positive things President Trump's doing, they would have no choice but to cover, okay, what's this about? What's happening? What's this issue about? And those are big issues. That's an 80-20 issue for us. It's 70+% of Democrats support voter ID when you have to vote, improving you're a citizen. So I think there's a bunch of reasons politically and structurally for the country why we should have this sense of urgency. So I think we just got to keep pushing on it.
And is Senator Thune, the majority leader, is he open to this tactic?
I think so. I think that, he's hearing from a lot of members on it, which is important. He's already committed to putting it on the floor, but again, it'll take an extra level of commitment to stay on it, and I think that's where the discussion should be.
All right. The second thing you mentioned was tax reform. What is the likelihood? I mean, because you're right. That again, Democrats aren't voting for tax reform. The president called them out on it last night for not voting for the first tax package. It would have to go through this arcane process called reconciliation, which would allow only 50 votes. What is the appetite for that? Another reconciliation bill for tax reform?
It's a good question. We would have to hold, we'd have to get 50 votes and JD Vance break the tie. So everything that you put in a reconciliation bill, then you have to understand that reality that you can only lose 3 people. So then you kind of get to what are some of the pillars that you could put in there that would get broad Republican support, because you can't count on any Democrat support, not even John Fetterman, who's, right on some issues. So I think that understanding that this peace through strength, rebuilding our industrial base, we don't have the industry in this country to produce all the things that we need for the Indo-Pacific. And that's why this conversation with Europe is so important, about them carrying their own weight so we can focus on other things. So I think that's part of it. I think things like as making mortgages more affordable, like maybe you can transfer your current mortgage if you've got a good rate one time. There's a lot of ideas that are floating out there that would be on this kind of affordability side of the ledger that I think would be important. And then do we need to do anything else by way of immigration laws? Is there something we can do to codify Trump's progress with the drug companies on, the Trump RX account, website where I'll say this real quick on the pharmaceuticals. This is a huge win. So effectively what's happening, Sean, was United States taxpayers or consumers were subsidizing the drug companies so they could offer their products to larger markets at the lowest possible price. So we were paying more for the same drugs. Well, that's now the inverse. So this most favored nation status thing means, no, wait a minute, we get the lowest cost of anywhere in the world. And that is what's driven this down. And all it took was a president willing to negotiate with the drug companies to do it, and also hold the feet to the fire of foreign leaders to get concessions on their part. Think about that. People have been talking about lowering drug prices for a very long time. President Trump did it by sheer will. So we should codify those things so you don't have a Democrat come in and try to reverse that.
Yeah, leadership matters. Last question I want to ask you, Senator. You mentioned the showmanship. I thought it was amazing. Is there one guest that you and I'm not asking you to sometimes this is like choosing among what child you love the best or something, but is there one guest where you say, Mr. President, that was a home, is there one of them, not to diminish the feat or anyone, but is there anyone else, anyone that when you said, I didn't see that coming? Well,
I think the helicopter pilot who really was, commanding the mission there in Venezuela, because we got a briefing about this after it happened about his heroics. And I'm glad that was made public. I mean, this guy was landing a helicopter full of military personnel and was like the lead guy. And there's all this incoming and his leg gets tore up mid-flight. He has to land this thing. If that thing goes down, right? First of all, it's a disaster for people who are on that particular Chinook, but also the whole mission is compromised. This guy, in a calm way, took literally incoming, landed it, and then he was there last night and was recognized for it. That's an American hero. This guy was willing to sacrifice his life for his country, and I'm glad he got the Congressional Medal of Honor. That was a cool moment.
Yeah, I'm glad you highlighted why that matters. So thank you for your input. I really appreciate your debrief on this, and look forward to catching up with you soon.
All right, Sean, take care.
You bet.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.